Okay, good morning, everybody. I can't see anybody, but it looks like there are a lot of, oh, there we go. There are a lot of people out there in the dark. That's wonderful. Thank you all. We're going to have a annoying sound from time to time to keep you awake. We're going to talk up here about, dig into some of the provocative and interesting things that Rishad and Lori just talked about. And then we're going to have a fair bit of time for Q&A. So
maybe.
No. Yes. Must have Q&A. It's interactive. People want to interact. So while we're yakking away up here, please think of some interesting things to talk about, to ask our panelists about. So the first thing I wanted to address, the general idea here is for the three of us up here to talk a little bit more about the agencies, what's happening with these august institutions, how they will thrive or not thrive in this world of disruption where the media is being disrupted, the consumer is disrupting everything, technology is disrupting everything, and if you throw around the word disruption a lot, that's always a good idea in a conference like this. But we all know everything's changing. I wanted to touch on to start off, the subject of creativity. You mentioned how important that is, and not only from the point of view of the ads have to be more creative, but the media has to be more creative, the thinking has to be more creative in terms of how we interact with consumers. And Rishad, you said something very interesting recently. It's sort of, I guess, embroidering on your remark about the holding companies and their competition. You said that marketers are so bewildered by the complexity of change right now, they have fallen behind not their competitors, not the other people in their category, but they've fallen behind consumers. And I think a perfect example of that is what you said about McDonald's. Here it is where, after all these years, they're suddenly letting consumers have what the consumers have always wanted all these years, which is to eat an Egg McMuffin at any time of the night or day. And that is something that the consumer wanted for years, and the people in Oak Brook, in their ivory tower hamburger university, they knew better. They had their processes, they had their systems, and they were not going to do that. At, I guess, 10:30 every morning, they shut off the flow of the Egg McMuffins and the hash browns, and you have to have lunch, whether you want lunch or not. Suddenly now they're getting creative, and that, of course, is after, 8 straight quarters of declining sales and a major hit to their stock price. And then in the few weeks that they've had all-day breakfast, suddenly same-store sales are up in the US for the first time in 2 years. So I wanted you guys to talk a little bit about creativity and how it means nowadays so much more than just being creative in writing a TV commercial. So it's a toss-up, as we used to say on the GE College Bowl. Does anybody want to take it?
I just got done speaking, Rishad, so...
So, I think creativity is extremely important, and it's really much more than about television commercials, because all of us can be highly, highly creative. And what creative is a combination of sort of innovation, which is fresh and insightful connections, which basically means listening to what's going on and like sort of connecting the dots in an interesting way. But it's also about, in many ways, finding ways to do things faster and cheaper. Mm-hmm. Oddly, we are living in a world where I think we are in a world not of deflation, but disinflation. And it's one of the things that marketers have begun to understand, but they're only right now putting pressure on their media companies. But eventually they will recognize that this is for real, because there is that. And so the idea of agility, organizational creativity, innovation about products and services, it's very, very broad. And a big part of that is actually opening up companies to lots of different people, lots of different thoughts.
Can you open up a company to outsiders?
Yes, you absolutely have to, because the reality of it is, I truly believe that Andy Grove was right for a different decade, which is he basically said only the paranoid will survive. I believe that in a collaborative, API-driven, connected world, that's a doomsday wish, which is one of the reasons Intel's not doing so well. right? I actually believe only the schizophrenic will thrive, okay? And that basically means you need to have multiple models and different ways of looking at it, which is one of the reasons I don't believe agencies will go away. We may go away because we are stupid, but there'll be some other agencies that'll help clients, because the reality of it is incestuousness has never given birth to good ideas. It's only given birth to bastard ideas.
Do you agree that the...
And which quote?
I'll narrow it down. Do you agree that the agencies as we know them today may not be here in the future, but there will be somebody serving, performing those functions and serving in that role, but maybe it will be expanded or more inclusive of consumer two-way communications from consumers and what they want and what, again, McDonald's, this was listening to the consumers who were demanding the all-day breakfast for years and years. It wasn't this incredible smart idea from some executive there.
Right. You know, I found it interesting what Chris was talking about when they were going through the agency selection process in regards to having a relationship and an intimacy and an understanding of what I would call, you know, the insight and the intelligence. But I really look at agencies right now as a consortium of talent. And I know we're somewhat defined in media creative agencies, but as we can continue to blur and migrate together, it is really about what I would call this aggregation of thinking and ideation. And that content really can come from anywhere. And I really, years ago, kind of this whole rage about crowdsourcing and really utilizing what I would call the tail or a network of thinkers and creators, and you know, the old adage of makers. And it's really kind of where I see us going back to, in that hiring individuals kind of in this very complex cross-platform set of skills. It's to me the future, and this is why I believe the model of some of the agencies that are constructed on content development and creativity is very difficult to sustain. And you know, the future for the big holding companies right now is how do we all continue to diversify and change as rapidly and fastly as we can.
Do either of you ever see a scenario where the quote-unquote creative part of the advertising business and the media side is smushed back together again as it was originally in the Mad Men days? Do you think that is possible? And then plus the restructuring of bringing in some of these other new skill sets like social media and so forth, and sort of reforming what an advertising agency is and means and does. And if that is the case, how much dislocation is that going to cause for folks like you guys?
We did it. I'm at 200 Hudson. We bought a building and there's 1,200 of us living together, and I talked a little bit about that culturally, where media creative live together, and to be even more transparent, it's one single P&L. It is very simplified model. Culturally difficult to do, right? To tell people to behave and move differently and live in a different type of environment. And I think for Havas, it's something that's proved very successful, but it's, you know, we're not at the scale of the Publicis Group yet, so it's much easier to maneuver.
I believe that we are going to have lots of different models. I don't necessarily believe that every model will come together, and to a great extent, you know, what Havas has done makes a lot of sense, but they still have people who are specializing in creative and specializing in media working together. Right. And they basically do this as sort of equals. Both have particular skill sets. The reason that and I've lived through the separation. I was part of the separating.
Right, you were one of the big.
So one of the key reasons is, at some particular stage in a very fast-moving world, you need best-of-breed talent. We cannot forget that. And best-of-breed talent need to learn how to work together, which is what, you know, a lot of people like Havas and we are doing and others are doing. For us, there's going to be three combinations, and that's our current belief, which may be wrong, which is we think the future is about IQ plus EQ plus DQ. Okay.
Which is,
so IQ is strategic consulting smarts, which is one of the reasons we've invested in that with Sapient Global Consulting. We basically we believe we need EQ, which is emotional and marketing services smart, which is where today's traditional agencies are. And then we basically need TQ, which is technology smarts. This is different than digital because, as has been said, digital is everywhere. But there's a certain amount of technology smarts that are necessary, which again is why we acquired Sapient and other things. Now we've got those, we are now rethinking our entire company, which for some strange reason I'm very involved in. Okay. And we are doing a lot of things which you will see sort of rethink the way forward, because one of the things we've said is the future does not fit in the containers of the past, but what are the containers of the future?
Right.
And how do we work together? But it is very, very important. And I think what Havas is doing, what a lot of the other holding companies are doing, what, like, for instance, an Accenture and Deloitte is doing by buying into creative agencies. You saw IBM with Weather.
It's happening the other way around,
right,
too.
It's all over.
Right.
So it's that confluence that's coming together. And we actually want to go away from being a holding company. Our aspiration, we make fall, so it may be a delusion and we'll all be dead and that'll be it, okay? But our aspiration is to basically move from being a holding company about advertising to being an admired force about business transformation through the alchemy of technology and creativity. Okay, it's a big mouthful, but alchemy of technology and creativity, there's a magic, but now the new magic is not only creativity, but technology.
Right.
So that alchemy, it's about business and marketing transformation, because that's really what our clients are asking for. This whole idea of how to buy stuff cheaper and all this other stuff is all about the plumbing, and we need the plumbing, but we really basically need to understand what house are we building and what's the goddamn poetry. Right? And those things require new skill sets, new smarts. And that's the one thing we have to be very careful about this industry. I know the ANAs here, sometimes the 4As are here. My biggest worry about our industry is we're turning on ourselves and we're driving all the talent away. And the reality of it is, at the end, if there's no talent, it doesn't matter what everything else is.
Why do you feel that that's happening?
I think because I think we don't have good leadership anywhere. Okay? I think we basically have to...
Present company excluded.
No. I think
Included.
present company... look, I'm a part of the leadership and we're in this hole, so that means that's probably us too.
And do you think that's because the leadership has come up from up the ranks in the traditional advertising business?
It's not just the advertising, it's the marketer, please. Make no
the
mistake.
okay.
Right? Eventually we work for the marketer, right? The reality of the marketers are scared. They don't have imagination anymore. We don't have imagination because eventually we work for marketers. I'm not making a blanket statement, but it is disproportionate. Think about what we have. We have industry groups turning each other. We've got detectives running around the place. Is this a transformational time that inspires talent to work in this industry, or what is it? It says go to Google, go to Facebook, go to Accenture, go anywhere. Right? The reality of it is someone's got to stand up and recognize creativity, technology, and marketing. The consumer and marketing and meeting their requirements makes sense, and we need leadership as an industry versus all this minutiae that everybody's working about.
Wow.
Yeah, wow. I couldn't agree.
That's a bombshell, ladies and gentlemen in the audience. That's a bombshell, and you heard it here first.
Well, I like the word bombshell, but I couldn't agree more, but I'm going to kind of talk about another dimension of all this, and the talent recruitment and the retention, and understanding that when you have, let's just say, under the age of 30 coming into the business, and what attracted them to the business, was, I believe, was the ideation, the creativity, and the ability to actually think and create. And now with all of this noise in the cloud and all of the, what I would call right now, it's a lot of intensity that flows in and out of the organization that's happening. We've kind of lost focus of why we're partners with certain advertisers and marketers. One other thing I wanted to mention was that you talk about some of the consulting firms getting into our space, but let's talk about media owners and operators themselves that have decided that why do I need to go through a network of agencies where I can go direct to a marketer or to a client to help solve an issue. So I think
that Pepsi Barry referenced Pepsi CMO earlier, their most recent commercial, the Joy of Cola revival commercial that was running on the World Series, they created it in-house. They didn't even have an agency for that.
And I think about the fact that sooner or later, the blurring is not just going to happen inside of the agency model, but it's going to happen within the media owners and operators themselves. And
yes.
I look at something when you get into the advancements in television and targeting and understanding that the pressure still is going to be upon the content and the messaging to actually deliver in all these channels and models.
Do you think that there will come a day where, say, Publicis or Havas and Comcast or CBS or Viacom merge with Google or Apple or Facebook or something? And
I don't necessarily think merge would be the word. I do believe that there's going to be some organic, authentic relationships based upon, to Rishad's point, the people that reside inside the holding companies. And I use that loosely at this point, but it's going to be about, at this, let's be fair, you can have one or you can have 1,000 of Havas working for you. It's really dependent upon your challenge in your business model. And at the end of the day, it's going to be organizations like the DPAA in Barry to understand as consortiums and collections of leaders that are delivering channels and opportunities. I heard something last night at a dinner that said, content is still king, whereas distribution will always be the queen, right? And if you start to think about that, the pressure of content and creativity in our model is so enormous, and how does it actually play? But I think Rishad and I both, because I jokingly said, but very respectfully, about the year we've spent working in pitching Sears, a very complicated 128-year-old retailer trying to figure out what's the next iteration of moving goods and services in the United States of America. And we share a client together, and
that still hasn't been decided yet, right?
Spiritually, I think.
I'll have to hold these two apart here until...
But that to me is a future model. It's not a single answer, and that's why this $27 billion media palooza that happened, it's crazy to think that there's a one-stop solution for all these
think
challenges.
that was you thought that the summer of crazy media reviews, you think that was some of the noise rather than something significant?
I think the fundamental basic belief is marketing has changed, and let's address the fact that the consumer is ahead of our clients. Our clients basically believe they are ahead of us, and our talent is questioning whether they need to join this industry. Those are the real issues versus everything else.
Okay. We're going to have some time for Q&A now. So any of you lovely folks who I do see are out there.
What advice would you give to the media owners of these screens outside the home when they go to the agency? And oftentimes what we hear is, well, we don't have a budget for you. We know the consumer's there, but it doesn't really fit in our current flow model. What advice do you have for the media owners as this revolution's going on with the consumer being in charge? And we know that they're spending, as you all know, most of their time outside the home. They're with the environment. They're engaging. What's the guidance you would give? What is it that you would recommend that we do going forward to more engage and be more proactive in helping bring solutions to this challenge that you're facing?
It's about the idea. The fact that you would come in and talk in a currency of a CPM to any of us in our world right now is beyond me. That's right. It's like, so I look at this to come in actually with a visualization, because this is why we're here. It's the visualization, the power of video, right? So come in with authentic, real life ideas. Sell me an idea. And to be fair, you're in the business of selling, right? And the way the models are decided right now in the agency, but at Havas, it's more of an ideation model as opposed to a buy or a tactical exercise of buying. That would be my recommendation. I always use the example of when a radio rep would come in and not bring any audio. I'd be like, what the hell are you doing here? Really? You sell radio. Like, let me hear it, right? So you think about this. So come with a visualization of what you're selling.
I'd build on that, and that I agree. So I'll give you something still different, which is I think what you all have is the last and the largest surviving mass media that will be left, period, okay? Networked outdoor will be the only mass media that will be left. And so instead, and we will require mass media, brands will still require mass media. And to a great extent, because it's external, it's networked, it's digital, and it's both larger than life, and it can be highly linked to mobile data, right? It can be extremely powerful. You'll have a very powerful medium, and I think when you need to basically go and say this is the future medium, and build it around two things, consumer behavior, and the fact that a lot of people are worried about what happens in a fragmented world.
Earlier, Rishad was speaking, and he said that owning data is not important. Just wondering if you could give more detail on that.
So I would basically say owning data, let me rephrase that. You cannot own all the data that you need, right? The reality of it is you are likely to own between 5 to 10% of the data you need unless you're one of 4 companies, Amazon, Google, Facebook, and maybe one other, okay? Apple, who won't actually use it. But besides that, the amount of data anybody has, including all the clients in the world combined, is very limited based on all the information that you actually require. A book that I would suggest all of you all read is Data versus Goliath, okay, which will tell you the amount of data that is being created. And for any marketer to believe, or any agency to believe that they control data, tells me they have no idea about where data is going.